So my first question, I guess, is what are the privacy implications of big data use in campaigns? Do users expect campaigns to collect large swaths of personal and commercial data? I'm not sure if a lot of people do. I think a lot of people who signed on to, My Mitt on the Mitt Romney website or the Barack Obama app on barackobama.com perhaps didn't understand kind of what they were giving up in terms of their Facebook information when they did so, even though it says they're looking at your likes, looking at your friends. I think people oftentimes don't understand. And also, what are the security and PR risks associated with hosting that data? I think if the Obama campaign had experienced a massive data breach, for example, let's say that one of their large databases had been just completely leaked, the black eye that would have been for their campaign would have been absolutely extraordinary. And of course, I've just lost my connection. It would have been absolutely extraordinary. And so I think that's sort of something that people don't really oftentimes consider.
Still lost it.
For a second, let me switch over. And that sort of brought me to a quote from Scott McNeely of Sun Microsystems. You already have zero privacy, get over it. I don't necessarily buy that, but you have to realize that's sort of the attitude of a lot of Silicon Valley and certainly a lot of Washington, D.C. So something to keep in mind. What convinces an informed person to willingly give campaign access to their personal data? This is something that a lot of groups that come in and say, hey, we want big data, we want all this personalized information. Well, what are you giving the user in exchange for that? Are you just saying, just give us your data for the sake of giving us your data, or trick them into giving your data? Well, that's a bait and switch. And so the experience that you're providing the user when you ask for their data really needs to take that data into consideration. If you're asking for personal and relationship data, then using personal and relationship data in the experience you provide to the user. And actually, let me go off that for a moment. I'll use the example of the Obama and Romney Facebook apps. There's tens of thousands of apps of the Romney users of the Romney Facebook app. That was launched very late in the campaign and had some pretty serious issues. That was the Commit to Mitt voting app. The Obama Facebook app, which was used throughout their sites and throughout their mobile devices, had roughly 1 million users. So clearly there was a disconnect between whether people were willing to sign up with Mitt Romney's app or whether people would sign up with Barack Obama's app. There are many other factors, but that was certainly a major factor. One of those is that, and this is speaking in generalities, women and Democrats are far more likely to be willing to use an app and to share something on Facebook than, in general, men are or Republicans are. And so when we looked at sort of bipartisan voting applications, which would state, I'm voting for Mitt, I'm voting for Obama from Facebook and from CNN, you'll see there are 62% of people who responded said they were voting for Barack Obama. 32% voted for Mitt Romney. Obviously, that's quite different than the actual percentage vote was in the United States. You look in the Facebook I voted at, I'm sorry, it's a little bit hard to read, but you'll see that the Facebook turnout by stated political affiliation, the top 5 are Barack Obama, Democratic, very liberal, 6, Green. Libertarian is actually above Republican in terms of users of the Facebook I voted at. So if you're a Republican, let's say you're a Republican political consultant, that's a much more serious barrier to entry than Democratic political consultants perhaps have to deal with. And then finally, my third question, and hopefully I'm not going too long here, is what data can ethically be shared by campaigns, both during and after a campaign, and with whom? And so we've seen the 2012 Obama campaign transition now to be organizing for action. And we've seen the Romney campaign has said that they will give what data they can to the Republican National Committee. Is that what people who signed up with those campaigns expected would be done with their data? And how much of that data can legally or ethically be transferred to what is legally a different entity? Those are questions, actually mostly for Facebook's lawyers, probably, but for hopefully for us to consider a little bit.
The targeted sharing tool that we had on the campaign was something that was the end goal. To go back to my first point, for a specific purpose. We used data to try and understand our supporters so that we could understand who they were connected to. And we did that for a very specific reason, which was that of our target group of under 35-year-olds for our GOTV target group, the people we needed to vote for us, of that target group, 50% of those people, we had no way of contacting them at all. We didn't have a phone number, we didn't have a postal address. We couldn't get to them at all. Of that 50% of people we couldn't get to, 85% of those people were friends with a friend of Barack Obama on Facebook. And so that connection between a fan of Barack Obama and the person we needed to get to, that was the only connection we had. And that is an additional point, you know, just the needs must element is an additional point to the point that has already been made on this panel and earlier, which was that somebody who is a friend of the person we're trying to get to, who is advocating for us, is such a much more powerful advocate than even the president could be. That personal connection is so much more powerful. So we use data to understand who we were trying to get to, and we use data to find the people who could get to them in a much more powerful way than anyone else could get to. The third point, and as someone who doesn't have any kind of coding or data or technical background, and really just kind of operates in campaigns on the basis of informed instinct, is important to me so I'm not out of a job, which is that campaigning is an art as well as a science, and that data can tell you so much, but without the human instinct and judgment to make use of that data in the communication and mobilization that you're trying to achieve, is really just a set of tools. So the example I want to give is some behavioral data that we used on the campaign. Was a big part of our email program. So we had an email that was extremely successful. Some of you might have got it, an email towards the end of the second fundraising quarter from Barack Obama with the subject line, "I will be outspent." It raised almost $3 million in a single email, which to that point was our most successful email ever in the history of the Obama organization. This next slide is where we were testing. Sorry, what we were testing. 18 different segments, 18 different subject lines being tested from different senders to try and understand what would work in that moment. If we'd sent the worst performing segment because we were guessing versus the best performing segment, we would have raised almost just over $2 million less than we did from sending "I will be outspent" from Barack Obama. And obviously that speaks to the power and value of data. But just to go back to the next slide, this was the 5th time we tried to explain to people the problem that we faced with being outspent by Mitt Romney. It was our 5th try, and data should tell us, if you're just looking at the numbers, you've tried this 4 times, it's not working. Stop trying to do this. But based on the instinct that we had and the conversations that we were having with bloggers and supporters and others, we knew this was a big deal. We knew that being outspent was something that would be, you know, people would feel it viscerally, and so we just kept trying. The data was telling us not to, but we had an instinct that this was the right thing to do, and trying different ways of explaining it, different ways of putting the argument, different ways of using subject lines, and on the 5th attempt, we got there.
My predictions for the next election, I think you're going to see a lot more targeted demographic-based banner advertising on social media sites. So whether it's YouTube or Google banner ads or Facebook ads, on the basis of people's demographics and stated preferences, and people are going to get very bored of that very quickly. Actually, the friend sharing, the content sharing through friends is definitely more valuable. I'm not quite sure how advanced that's going to be by 2015, personally, in this country. The thing they must do, I think, is marginal seats, is look at the social media campaigns they run in marginal seats, because the big swings in elections in this country, the ones that make a real difference, are from those that aren't voting to those, so it's from the non-voter to the apathetic who did vote but didn't, you know, who's not going to vote. If you can get the apathetic, the non-voters, to vote for you, or indeed if you can mobilise your own vote more effectively in 50 or 60 key marginal seats, that can make a big difference. And I think social media certainly allows for, and we've seen it, for people to be able to mobilise their vote at a local level. And I ran a survey and released it yesterday. Actually, it wasn't a survey, it was a study. Released it a couple of days ago now, actually, on the political party social media following of the three main parties in the UK. The Conservative Party has about 110, 120,000 formal members now. These were the people that were knocking on doors, volunteering, fundraising. There was 3 million Conservative Party members in the 1950s. It's 110,000 now. But they have 450,000 unique Twitter followers that only follow the Conservative Party and no one else. They have 250 or so thousand Facebook friends that like the party, a very young demographic, over 50% under 24. These are the people they are going to have to rely on to get out, even if it's ephemeral. It's a stretchy, elastic sort of membership that can come and go. But you have to mobilise these people to get out and work for you at an election, especially in the marginals. And I released a report on Beppe Grillo, the Italian politician, who is by far the most followed social media politician in Europe. It's not up to Obama's levels, but he has more Twitter followers and more Facebook friends than all the UK politicians combined. Now, I ran another Facebook survey of his 1 million Facebook friends, and we calculated that roughly 200,000 of them considered themselves to be formal members of his party, i.e. they were the people that, for that campaign, in which he completely overturned the Italian political system. 12 months ago, he's polling at under 10%, and suddenly he becomes the leader of the largest party without giving a single interview to mainstream media in Italy. And he did this through social media, but through getting his social media supporters onto the streets. They filled the piazzas on his tsunami tour, they knocked on doors, and they all went out and voted. And in a world of high apathy and low voter turnout, if you can do that, then you're really going to make a difference. And then my prediction for public services is that particularly the police are going to start looking a lot, and they already are, at social media, how they can collect it, use it, analyse it, but I believe they will tread very carefully. They're going to try to avoid to overstep the mark, because as many of you will have seen, concerns and attitudes about misuse of personal information has become one of the great concerns for citizens in this country and indeed all across Europe. And I think they know, and other public services know, that if they get this wrong, and they're seen to be overstepping the mark at the beginning, they'll have to continue to operate with one hand tied behind their back because nobody trusts what they do. And so I think what you'll see is a very slow, very cautious, very careful move into this area from public services, and I think that's probably the way that it should be.